Today I'm going to talk about a positive proof for God's existence. And I want any objectors to treat this as a unique argument. That's not to say it is a unique argument. It's based off an old one, but not one that many people know of. As a matter of fact, I have never ran into a single person who is familiar with this argument. Usually, atheists are concerned with St. Thomas's 5 ways, written in the Summa Theologica, whose audience was people studying for the priesthood and philosophers who were very educated in the Aristotelian philosophy. The Summa Contra Gentiles, on the other hand, was written for atheists, Jews, and Muslims. So if you're intellectually honest, you would engage with the argument from the Summa Contra Gentiles that is written for you, if you're an atheist. So, what does this argument say? Well, first I'm going to state the argument and then support the premises, and then try to bring it into a modern context. There's 3 premises to this argument. The first is that some things move. The second is that everything that does move is moved by another which moves it. And the third premise is that among movers and things moved, it is impossible to proceed to infinity. Now, if you put these 3 premises together, the result is that we must posit something which moves, but is not itself subject to motion. And this we call the unmoved mover, and this is what theists call God. Now, let's take each of the premises and talk about them. First, some things move. I want to focus on the word some, because one of the most common objections to this argument is as if people completely glance over the word some, and they ask, well, why does everything move, but then God, special pleading, does not move? No, the argument says some. And in logic, the word some can mean any number. In other words, if 99% of things in the universe move, or whether only one thing in the universe was moving, the word some covers that. If you ever studied logic, you know what I'm talking about, some versus all, or none. Second premise, well, let's go back. The first premise that some things move is obvious. I'm moving right now. If nothing moved at all, people deny that premise, then all physics has been done away with, because the basics of physics is motion. And if you do away with physics, you do away with chemistry, biology, and every empirical science. Anyway, the second premise is that everything which does move has its motion contingent on that of another. Now, if you go to Google and type in Summa Contra Gentiles, chapter 15, you'll discover an in-depth analysis of this. I do not want to get overly technical for this video, so that's something you can investigate on your own. Take me another 5 minutes to explain that one. The third premise, however, that there can't be an infinite series of movers and things moved, is usually what people object to. They usually don't object to the second premise, but the third. Now, the third premise is that there can't be an infinite series of movers and things moved. What this simply means is that if there were an infinite amount of movers and things moved, these would be bodies. And this motion, say A hits B, that initial motion would be simultaneous. And if there is an infinite amount of bodies responsible for motion all at once, then an infinite number of things would be moving in a finite amount of time, and that is impossible. And again, there's even an in-depth analysis of that, but I won't be getting into that here. Instead, I want to explain what the argument means, because it sounds a lot like the first cause argument. But it's important to note that we're not talking about causal sequence here. There's something that needs to be recovered from Aristotelian philosophy, and that is the four causes: material, formal, efficient, and final. Now, empirical science, as biology, chemistry, modern physics, is concerned with material and formal causes. So, what is a formal cause is the arrangement of things. So, for example, take a bronze statue. The material cause would be the bronze. In other words, you could have a statue 2 feet tall or 5 feet tall. It would have the same material cause if it was made up out of bronze. The formal cause would be the shape or the arrangement of that bronze. The efficient cause would be the sculptor, who had in his mind first the idea of the sculpture and then put it into matter. And the final cause would be, why was that bronze statue made? It was done for the sake of, perhaps, I don't know, maybe it was made for a king, an image of a king or something like that. But the material cause for Aristotle and matter means something a bit different than what we mean by matter today. When we say matter, we might think of atoms, but matter is the capacity to receive a form from some other thing. Now, God, the unmoved mover, would be an efficient and final cause, outside of the realm of empirical science. Now, how God moves things is not how material things move each other. God moves things without himself undergoing motion. How? Well, think of a chocolate bar in a vending machine. It just sits there, but people move towards it because of its inherent goodness, its taste. It doesn't need to move itself at all in order to produce motion and other things. And in the same way, God is the ultimate goodness, and all things are drawn to God without God himself moving. So, that's about it for this argument. There's one objection that I thought was rather strange, but people often bring modern science into this and think that somehow it's going to change the argument, which it doesn't. For example, somebody brought in quantum mechanics and said that, well, a thing could be a cause of itself, A could cause B, and B could cause A, theoretically. There's no empirical evidence to verify it, but it's nothing new either. Aristotle considered this over 300 years before Christ. Metaphysics Book 5, read it, and you'll discover that he's not talking about sequential causality, and he talks about causes being simultaneous. The material and formal cause of a thing are simultaneous. One need not precede the other, necessarily. In priority, but not in time. Any questions, feel free to direct them. I'll be debating somebody on this argument, and it will be recorded.